a streak that goes from the southwest of Colorado to the northeast, full of awesome geologic deposits, lots of like gold and silver and gems and lead and all sorts of precious metals. So it's a great area to do that kind of geology work. Me and Joshua could talk more about that.
I forgot to mention one more thing. Show of hands, who actually knows what paleontology is? Because I just realized some of you might not know. Cool, so some of y'all do. So paleontology is the study of fossils, and it's a subdiscipline of geology, because geology, by definition, the word means the study of the earth. And fossils are part of the earth and a part of the history of the earth, and that's mainly what I focus in. And then within that, you can focus in different disciplines of paleontology. So geology is a really massive career field and a massive discipline in general. And like I said, you can, and like he said, he's a hydrologist. I'm more of a fossil person. I also study sediments because dirt's cool. But there's just so much you can do within geology. You can do all kinds of things as long as it relates to the study of the earth and of the geology.
And again, I'll ask some questions. If you guys have questions, make sure to raise your hand and ask them. But why did you choose your job? Why did you choose your career?
I can start that one. This one's easy for me. I decided to get into geology because I just love being outside. It's a huge thing for me. My job right now is 80% in the field. You know, I'm on computers a little bit. I don't think there's any job where you can get away from computers, but for me, I love getting outside, driving my truck around the mountains, running around in the dirt, getting samples, playing in the water. That's a huge part for me. That's why I picked this career field.
For me, it was similar things. I love being outdoors, grew up outdoors in the South where there's nothing else to do but go outside. So geology I just kind of got into naturally because I've always had an interest in science. I'm a nerd. All scientists are nerds. And I focused when I was a kid more on, I really liked rocks growing up, and it just kind of naturally evolved into me getting into geology. And I really love it. Like I mentioned, it's a massive discipline, and you can learn so much about either geology in general. You can, like I said, focus in a certain discipline. And it's just a massive, and it's also a very new science. So a lot of sciences like physics and astronomy have been known about for centuries. Geology really didn't get started until probably about 150, 200 years ago. It was known about before then and somewhat studied in general, but it wasn't really well investigated or understood. And what I focus in paleontology, that wasn't even fully understood until about 150 years ago, and it's still constantly being studied, and new things are being discovered. And it's pretty amazing how new of a science it is when things that were being taught, as far as geological things, concepts being taught in the 1960s, we now know are just wrong. They're not, well, maybe not completely wrong, but we know more information now, and we know how things work better is what I'm trying to get at. But that's why I got into it, because I just love being outdoors, I love science, and I love the earth. It's pretty cool. You kind of can't ignore it.
So you guys are freshmen, correct? Yeah. Okay. So when I was a freshman, I had absolutely no clue what I wanted to do. I hadn't even thought about it, frankly. They didn't have things like this where they introduced you to people that did things. I just went to school every day. But part of what I enjoyed doing in high school was drafting. There was a drafting class, and we did it by hand back then. We didn't do it by computer like you do today. And I enjoyed that. It was a way to stay out of trouble. It was a way to stay out of everybody's radar, so that they didn't make me take hard classes, or at least I didn't think so at the time. And so I was good at drafting, and actually I asked my counselor, I said, what can you do with drafting? Because I didn't know that either. I grew up in a very small town where people like me didn't exist, or people like my profession was pretty much invisible. So it was my drafting teacher that said, well, you can study architecture. And they had a university that did that, so I said, okay, I'm going to do that. So I was not passionate about it until I started to learn more about it. And I didn't learn more about it until I was in high school, or until actually I was in college. I went to junior college first, and then the university. So, but I built a career out of it, built several businesses out of it, and had several really great experiences with it. I continued to pursue it academically. said, I've got a master's degree in community development, which studies how people interact with their built environment. And then my PhD is going to be in public policy and urban design, which talks about how cities are made, how cities are formed, how cities are planned, not just individual buildings, but the entire fabric of society. So that's how I got into it.
You already answered this, but did you always know what you wanted to do, or did you start a different path?
When it came to my career, I did not, like similarly, I did not know what I was going to do when I was in high school. You know, just going through the classes, going through the motions. I did like math a lot, so if you like math, science is like a great field for that. And I didn't realize I'm relatively new to science as a career. I'm 28 years old, and I just started kind of doing science careers over the last 4 or 5 years. So you have a long time to develop that passion. You don't have to know this semester or by the end of this year what your career is going to be. Just go ahead and get through those basics, and you'll develop your passion if you stay persistent and you stick with it.
So I somewhat did, like I mentioned, I was always interested in science, but trying to find a career field, I've done a lot of different labor jobs. I've also taken several courses more aimed towards engineering, because I originally went to college to be a mechanical engineer. Then I realized it's not so much working with your hands like I do, it's more conceptual stuff, and also I am not good at calculus. At least I wasn't back then. And with math, when I went through school, I was terrible at it, and now looking back, I'm like, I just didn't get good instruction on how math actually works, because now that I'm working in science, I definitely better understand it. So don't let, if you're not good at math, don't let that deter you, I suppose. But I kind of sort of knew that I always wanted to pursue something in science, and whenever it came for me to switch out of mechanical engineering classes and try to get into something else, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. So I took a semester in college and just looked at my options, and I tried, I went into geology, and instantly, I knew it was what I wanted to do. I instantly started doing really good, started making a lot of connections within the field, and I guess the rest is history. Now I'm living in Colorado, which is awesome.
You know, I'd like to piggyback on your comment for a moment. Algebra was my first real math class, and that was as a freshman. We were called ninth graders because I was in junior high. We didn't have middle schools back then. So I wasn't in high school until I was a sophomore. But so I was always afraid of mathematics. I didn't understand. As soon as they took the numbers away, I was lost, right? I don't know if you guys are in algebra. I'm sure you are already. You've already taken that probably in calculus by now, who knows. As soon as they took numbers away, I was lost, right? And I sucked at math. And I was too afraid to say anything about it. But here's something that you said that was a realization of mine. And it was, as soon as I got to apply mathematics to something, it became completely obvious to me. So I didn't like math until I liked physics. So once I took physics and I could apply my mathematics, I knew what was happening in the world. I just got to plug the mathematics into it. So and that was a realization for me. I mean, like a real life realization. Like, oh, this is what math is for. I thought we were just doing letters. So anyway.
Yeah, awesome. That's encouraging. Can you describe one of your typical work days?
Okay, so apparently I have the boring work day as compared to these guys. I drive my pickup anywhere. I just drive my pickup to and from home. So my typical work day, I start very early, but I like quiet time. So I own my own business, so I own my own office and all of my own stuff. I don't work for anybody, so I don't have to punch a clock. The downside to not punching a clock is I work very, very early and I work very, very long hours, but I enjoy it a lot because it's exploration. Everything is exploration for me. Sometimes you look at your watch and you go, oh, I gotta go home because I've been here that many hours already. So my typical day is I come in, organize my day mentally, figure out what my calendar says, figure out where I need to be, like here, figure out who I need to get in contact with, because my profession is all about communication. I have to communicate with people every day in 3 different ways. I have to communicate verbally, I have to communicate through the written word, and I have to communicate graphically, which means I draw drawings, a lot of drawings, lots and lots and lots of drawings. So I have to communicate, and so I have to organize how I'm going to do that every day. My days are filled with either being on the computer, drafting, or I'm in a sketchbook, thinking about things that are going on in my head, solutions, trying to come up with solutions, because I'm a problem solver. That's what I do for a living, is I solve problems. I meet with people, clients, consulting engineers. Sometimes I meet with hydrologists and geologists because I can't build on really bad soil, so I've got to ask somebody how to help me with the engineering on soils, which is civil engineering, but it's also based in geology and hydrology. So I meet with consulting engineers, I go out on job sites, so I see what I designed last year is being built this year, so I've got to go out and pay attention to that and answer questions that occur on the job site about different details or about changes that need to occur. So again, I solve problems. My brain is really good at solving problems, which is why when you ask me a question today, I'll give you an answer because I can solve that problem pretty quick, meaning my brain just does that automatically. And so that's one of the things that I think you need to pay attention to, maybe, is to start to see your brain as somebody different than you, that you need to introduce yourself to and understand. Because my brain does things that I go, oh, I didn't know I could do that. But I can, because my brain enjoys doing it. And I think that's, we pick the things that we want to do in life because they're easy for our brains. Our brains enjoy it. And that's what makes work fun. If your brain doesn't enjoy it, you're not going to have any fun either. I don't know if I even answered the question. What was the question? Oh, my typical day. Yeah, typical day. Solving problems, talking to people, my 3 ways of communicating, and then go home. That's my typical day.
So my typical work day, I would consider it actually somewhat atypical because I really enjoy about my work career field is that it's always something different, always something new. Like today I'm here talking to you guys, and then this afternoon I got to go and get some stuff ready for tomorrow where we're going to be filming an educational video series in Garden Park. And past couple days I've been working on the computer, working on report stuff, and then I might get an email from somebody like, hey, we got this mine site that may need to be inspected. Why don't you figure out if you need to go out there, and if it does, I'll go out there, I'll inspect it and make sure there's no paleo resources that will be disturbed. And similar to stuff he does with site inspection, I don't do that a whole lot though. And then, hey, with the fleet vehicles, you need to go do the monthly reports for those, and then I'll do that, do all the paperwork and whatnot. But I do get to go out in the field, and I definitely enjoy that as my favorite part of my job. I do it at least once a week. I just get to go out in the middle of nowhere by myself, off-road and hike. That's, yeah, pretty much off-road and hike. It's pretty awesome. But I'm out there for a reason, and I do take my job very seriously, of course. But I love doing it. I absolutely do. Even when I'm working in the office, I'm still working on something I most likely enjoy because it's necessary, and it's something that, like I mentioned, we can't ignore the earth because we constantly interact with it. And part of my job is to just study how we interact with it and make sure people are doing it properly. And yeah, typical work day is pretty atypical, like I said. And problem solving is definitely something you have to factor into every job you do, pretty much. There's quite a few times where I'll get out in the field and I'll realize, oh crap, the map that I did make, the file's corrupted and I can't use it on my tablet I have with me for navigating. Or I realize I totally forgot a piece of equipment, so then I got to figure out, well, that's like my phone I can use as an analog for it and just navigate with that, or use my GPS watch, something like that. So you definitely have to problem solve, and there's also some times where, especially with how do I put this? With outdoor work, there is a lot you didn't anticipate, like running into a cactus in the middle of nowhere. So yes, problem solving is very important in each career field.
Typical day for me, so it depends on the time of the year a lot. With if you're doing scientific research or scientific studies, we kind of have a field season, we'll call it, which will be typically this time of year. It's like, it can be anywhere from like April or May, whenever the snow starts melting, to about October. This year was pretty good because it's been pretty warm, so I've been able to work in the field a little bit longer. But for a lot of scientists, like our field season is where we're in the woods or outside or at our area all the time. So a typical day for me for that is waking up really early in the morning, 6 in the morning, getting in my truck, grabbing all our equipment, going to the gas station, getting coffee, and then driving out to our site and either collecting water data, collecting information about the site. I do a lot of like biological stuff with plants, see if there's any invasive species at a mine site, looking at hazards. In the off season, kind of right around this time of year and through the winter when there's so much snow on the ground or it's just too cold, you don't want to be out, you're not really expected to do that much field work because ideally you do it all in the summer. So this time of year for me, it's a lot more computer work. I do a lot more documents, kind of writing up what I did over the field season. I don't have a lot of time to like review my data when I'm in the summer because I'm always up early, going. This time, like my pace is a little bit slower. I'm able to like look at the stuff I collected and review that. Another big part of my day, either time of the year, is maps. Do we have any students who like love maps or like maps? Do we have anybody? There's usually a few. Oh, we got this guy over here. Maps, yeah, a couple up there. Maps are a huge part of my job. We're always looking at maps all the time, either on the computer, we put them on a little iPad, we have physical old maps. For field work and geology especially, and I'm sure with city planning, you're always looking at maps too. That's a huge part of supplementing scientific work is that spatial data, looking around at where we're working. It's huge.
Can I ask you a question? So how much, you guys, you're young guys, so how much of your work is self-directed and how much is research that's being directed from above that you're participating in?
So for me, I do have to do a lot of work, self-motivated or self-micromanaged, I suppose. A lot of my day is definitely things that I'm doing on my own independently. And then, like I mentioned, I can get an email out of nowhere that's like, hey, can you go check on this? Can you go do this? But at the same time, I am definitely working on projects that were passed down from higher supervisors. But especially with COVID, we see a lot of working from home, and I do that as well, which is something where you have to self-micromanage. But a lot of it is sort of me just knocking out whatever comes across my imaginary desk, I suppose, but it's also me working on things that I think should be important or may be important, and I'm investigating those things. So, if that answers your question.
Yeah, I get a lot of directives from my supervisor, kind of broad picture projects. Like you need to do a site inventory in the Sugarloaf mining district at a few mine sites, and we need that by this deadline. So my day-to-day is micromanaged. I don't need to do it on a particular day, but I do have deadlines for that. I collaborate with other agencies as well. So I work with the Division of Reclamation, Mining, and Safety, and that is the Colorado State Division of Mining. And I'll collaborate with them, and we'll kind of get other projects started. And so that's not really a directive from above, but working with other agencies to problem solve. And so that's a really cool aspect of my job. And then also for the Bureau of Land Management, and this could apply for kids your age too, for sure, is we have seasonal workers and interns that always work for the Bureau of Land Management over the summer. And so a big part of me and Joshua's job is kind of giving them work too. These, either students or high school students that only need a couple hours of work a week. And so that usually lands on guys like me and Josh to like give them directives or grab them and tell them to come along with us. So we're kind of in the middle. We're the middle management, I think, right? We're the middleman. So yeah, it goes both ways, up and down.
So not gonna lie, when I found out about the required internship program, I thought that was really cool because that's such an awesome opportunity to go explore career field. Like that didn't exist when I was in high school, and I'm kind of jealous about it because I would love to go and work at BLM or really just anywhere awesome during high school. That would have been pretty neat.
What's your favorite part about your job?
I think For me, the favorite part of my job is exploration, it's curiosity. Every time I have a project, it's usually generated by someone else, meaning they come into my office and they want to build something. They want to build a veterinary clinic, for example. Well, if I don't know anything about how a veterinary clinic works, I have to learn that. So somebody's got to teach me. So I learn all aspects of a vet clinic, and then I can help you design one. I have to ask the right questions, so I get the right answers, so I understand what it is I'm doing. And then tomorrow it'll be a bank, and after that it'll be a warehouse. And after that it'll be a school. After that it'll be an office building. And I get to learn all of those things. And I say I get to learn because I think that's a special thing. I get to learn about what everybody else does, which makes me a storehouse of ways to rob banks. It's always the blueprints, right? They're always looking for the blueprints to the bank. Yeah, that's me. So that's it. Exploration for me and curiosity. Those are absolutely the most fun things I do every day.
I was going to say pretty much the same thing. Exploring and learning new things is definitely something I always do. I just love learning, and I love exploring, being outdoors, and I don't know, it's just a curiosity, I suppose. That's why I became a scientist, just I'm curious about what's around us. Oh, sorry, I thought somebody was coming in. Like whenever you're driving down the road, like through Garden Park or just anywhere around here, and you see that, hey, this bed of rocks is tilted this way, and over here this one's more like a A shape. Why is that? Why is it like that? How old is it? Why is this one different color? Why does this one have fossils in it? And that's my job. I figure those things out. Figure out why is it like that. Which, spoiler alert, is the Rocky Mountain building. But that's pretty much my job, and I love going out in the middle of nowhere and figuring out, hey, is there fossils present here? What's the geology like? If there is fossils, are they small pieces that aren't worth collecting, or is this something actually significant where I have to call somebody from Denver and be like, hey, can you come down here and let's excavate this? Which I haven't had to do yet, but I want to. But yeah, mainly exploring and curiosity. That's mainly it. Also, I just love being outdoors. Like I said, the best part of my job is just really getting to do what I love, being outdoors, exploring, and learning about the natural world. And also what came before us, you know, fossils. How cool is that?
I can't wait till you find the Joshuasaurus. It's going to be a big day for you. I think in the big picture, the favorite part about my job is how fulfilling it is to do environmental cleanup. And this is something that stemmed from me as a kid, just like wanting to give back to the earth. And when there's pollution, like how can we go ahead and clean that up? That stuff is so fulfilling, and especially working in this area, a place that I call home, just making sure that my little corner of the world is cleaner than when we left it is so fulfilling, and it keeps me going, and it keeps me wanting to be in this field, for sure.
Okay. What is the hardest part about your job?
All right, go ahead.
Bureaucracy. Yeah, so I mean, I am. So I work for the government and with the museum, and the hardest part is mainly just, there's a lot of rules, which rules are good for the most part. But it's mainly, with bureaucracy, what I mean is just having to go by the rules or just, I suppose, keep micromanaging with other people because everybody else's schedule is different than yours, and also they may not have the knowledge or the liberty to tell you or help you in the way that you're asking. So it's more, yeah, doing things by the procedures that you're supposed to do, but also, which is good. It's just slow, and also coordinating and micromanaging with other people. I would say that's probably the hardest part, as well as the weather. Obviously, the weather is the biggest, hardest thing of my job because if it's raining and it's really muddy, can't go some places, and if we're trying to film a video, can't do that when it's really cloudy or if it's raining or if it's late in the afternoon. So that's probably the three, yeah, that's probably the three biggest hard parts of my job.
I think a lot of scientists would agree with you. Dealing with people is a really hard part, and that's not something that you learn when you're in chemistry class or physics class, is how to deal with people. But I like dealing with people, so I don't think it's the hardest. I think the hardest for me is those the field days where you're doing your 10th field day in 2 weeks. You're tired. You're out in the woods. It's weather. You're collecting samples, but you know that you have to do as much field work as you can during this small amount of time when the weather's good over the summer. It's that persistence, it's that going every day, it's that waking up early every day, and that it can be really hard on a day-to-day basis. But now that it's November and I'm like looking back at my summer and looking back at my data, I'm like, I did really good work and I feel really fulfilled. But it's that day-to-day grinding through all those little tasks that your boss puts on you or the person working for you is asking you for that can be really tough. But if you look at the bigger picture, that's what gets me through for sure.
Well, I'm glad I didn't start because I thought, the very first thing I thought was people. And I thought, boy, that's going to be harsh. Maybe I should let these guys go. They'll have something better. I deal with lots of rules too. Regulatory agencies, state, local, national, all sorts of different rules I've got to follow. I don't find that particularly frustrating. Again, it's part of my problem-solving brain. It says, okay, well, that's a hurdle. How do I get over it? So I get frustrated with things day to day. There's, budgets sometimes frustrate me, procedures frustrate me, bureaucracy or regulatory agencies frustrate me. But again, I immediately switch over to problem solving and say, okay, what am I going to do now? The other thing I think that frustrated me early on as a teenager and as a young adult was not being in charge of my own destiny. And so the first opportunity I had to be my own person, I took it. And out of the 30 years of practicing architecture, 27 of those years have been under my own firm and my own name, doing my own work, which is scary. That's what I really wanted. I really wanted to be in command of my own destiny. And as soon as they allowed me to do that, legally allowed me to do that, then that's what I did.
All right. Any questions so far? Yes.
For her.
How many hours do you usually work?
Well, I still got my microphone on, so I'll start. Typical is 40 hours, just like everybody, full-time, right? I've got employees, so I've got to be there the same time they are. But I probably work, I get into the office at about 4 every morning. I'm there until about 6. And then sometimes on the weekends I goof around with solutions, drawing things, and that kind of stuff. I think when you're exploratory, like the people sitting up here are, when we're always thinking about it. We may clock in and clock out, and we may charge people money for the hours that we spend, but I think we're always thinking about what we're going to do on Monday, or what we're going to do on Saturday, or what we're going to do a month from now. So I don't think we ever shut our brains off, but I don't know, you guys can contradict me if you want.
No, that's exactly right. So for me, a work week is roughly 40 hours, but that can be more or maybe even a little less depending on how much work I have that week, and also depending on, it's between work and also, like I mentioned, you have to micromanage a work day, at least in my case. So some days I might be working from home, working on my own stuff for a little bit longer hours than 8-hour work day. And like you mentioned, on the weekends and on days that I'm off, yeah, I definitely do geology as a hobby as well as a career. Lately for me, but unfortunately because it's about to start snowing in some of the best spots, I got into gold prospecting, and it's a really interesting hobby, even though I put more money into it than what I'm getting out of it right now. It's just fun to go out in the middle of nowhere and just look for gold, or really anything cool geology-wise. I love going exploring, I love hiking, and that's why I love this area, is because the Rockies are really amazing. And I'm also a big history nerd, so this whole area's got a lot of the Old West history. So I'm always doing my career, and it's what I love doing. It is, it really is. Yeah, is that answer the question?
Yeah. If you work for the government, you get weekends off and you get paid holidays. So it's nice.
Okay. Yeah.
How many dinosaurs have you found?
So I found 0.
I found 0 because they're dead. But as far as actual fossils that were big enough to collect, none so far. But there is a couple that I'm hoping somebody else can come take a look at, because there's a couple spots where I think that there might still be something worth excavating. This is back. There are historical sites in Garden Park from where dinosaurs were previously excavated. But this area, there's quite a few really good specimens. Actually, the Colorado State Fossil was excavated from Garden Park. It's really awesome. It's that one, and then the one that, what's his name? Miss Spike, that's the name of the dinosaur fossil. It was also excavated in Garden Park. They're two of the most intact stegosauruses in existence, and there's also quite a few other dinosaurs excavated here that are by far the best of their kind. It's pretty awesome. I'm really glad that I moved here and I got this job.
Now, is that because of the Great Inland Sea, and this was the first bank of the Great Inland Sea, and that's why we were finding more fossil record here?
So with this area, there is, with the Western Interior Seaway, what you're mentioning, that's Cretaceous age, which the dinosaurs were around. And there are quite a few dinosaurs we find within the rock from the Cretaceous. But everything here is actually from Jurassic and through Cretaceous, which is a pretty big window of time. And with a lot of the fossils, it just depends. With Garden Park, a lot of it's deposited in what used to be creek beds. So they would die, and then their remains would get floated down, and sometimes you just find 1 or 2 bones, sometimes you find intact skeletons. But it just really depends. That's where you know where the bones are, right? You know, this used to be a creek, this used to be a shallow river channel, this used to be a shallow inland sea or a swamp. And you know, that's, if something died, that's probably where the bones accumulated. And so that's where we know where to look, and that's why the ones here are so concentrated and so well preserved. Answer your question pretty well?
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's all good. I could talk about this for hours, obviously.
All right, we're gonna take a quick break. So, I'm so excited. I haven't tried this yet, though, to see if it's gonna work, so you're my guinea pigs. All right, who's heard of Virginia Tech? Virginia Tech? Who knows what the mascot is? No. Yeah, you got it. It's some weird looking bird they call a hokie. So, when you go to their games, you're required to participate in an activity, and so we're going to do that activity today. And hopefully we're going to make it work. So everybody stand up. Come on. You are some slow standers today. All right. Now, we've done this in a full football stadium, so I know it can be done in where we stand. So, ready? Here we go. I'm going to see if this works. Oh. Come on, no one's got the right arm in. Left arm in. Come on. We're going to do this until we do it. That's what it's all about. Oh my gosh. Come on. We're going to do it again. You guys are horrible people. Come on, let's go. Thank you, Danica. You are a good player. Oh, you as well. Oh, sorry. I thought it was Danica who said it. Sorry. Oh. Okay. All right. You guys should feel ashamed for your failure at hokey pokey. Well, don't go to a Virginia Tech game, because you're required to do it. All right. We're gonna go ahead and get started again. We've been talking a lot about the nature of what they do. Now we're gonna be starting to talk more about the, what education you have, how much you get paid, those kind of benefits of working, those kind of things. So, why don't we start with, how much do you get paid? How much do you get paid?
Depends where you live and what your job is, I suppose. I get paid right now, I think like 38 to 45 grand a year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but I don't care. It's enough to keep me, it's enough to keep me happy, and I'm not a very extravagant person, I guess. So I guess it depends how much money you want to make, and if you have a more expensive lifestyle. And here in Colorado, things are a little more expensive, so I guess that's what it depends on. And what was the other part of the question?
We'll move on from there, so.
With my job at the BLM, I get paid about $15 an hour.
So for me, it depends on how much work I get.
Make way more money at McDonald's or something.
15?
Yeah, that's how.
15 times 2,070. 2070. That's the amount of work hours in a year. All right.
There you go.
Well,
Yeah.
2070 times 10 is 20,700, right? And then half of that is another 10, so that's a little over $30,000.
Yeah, starting out in like government scientist work is
See?
not. You're not gonna get a pot of gold. It's not. It's humbling for sure.
Always do easy math.
Yeah.
Always do easy math.
That's super easy, man. All right?
Yeah, but I think I got it faster than you did, didn't I?
Okay.
Okay. All right. For me, my work is self-directed.
Okay, just a second, guys. Thank you.
My work is self-directed, so the amount of money I work in a year depends on how healthy the projects I have and how many I have and how many I can accomplish. I run my own business, so I have to understand expenses at the business level, not just the personal level. So asking me that question is a very complicated question because it's not just my paycheck times 12 months and that's what I get, and I pay taxes and that's what I have left over to buy stuff with. I have employees, I have equipment, I have to learn how to depreciate things over time, I have to learn how the tax code so I understand what my corporate tax rate is versus my individual tax rate. So that's the difference between having a job and running a job. So how much do I make? Depends. When I came out of school, this is again in 92. I graduated from high school in 85, that's how old I am. I'm older than your parents. Probably. And I came out with a 5-year bachelor's degree and made $18,000 a year. And that was $18,000 a year of me being half-time office assistant, which meant running copies and making coffee and that kind of stuff, and being an architect, an intern architect. But I've also had years where I made $100,000. So it just varies.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. And I was about to say, whenever I finished undergraduate and then went into graduate school, before then, most of it was $12 an hour. And then during graduate school, I made $16,000 a year, which was 8 months for the 2 semesters. It was, at the time, most money I made, and it's not a whole lot, that's true. Learned to eat from Dollar Tree quite a bit. But I made it, and like I said, I still live pretty much comfortably. You just have to budget things out and learn how to live within your means.
What education is required to work in your field?
In my field, you have to have a college diploma to be an architect. So there's a couple of different ways to do that. Today, the coursework that I took 30 years ago, the degree isn't available anymore. So I have a Bachelor of Architecture. But if you take the exact same courses I took today, you graduate with a master's degree automatically. You can't get a bachelor's degree in architecture anymore. So if you take my course, you will graduate in 5 years with a master's degree in architecture. And then you're just an intern architect and you still don't know anything. So then for 3 years you work as an apprentice underneath a licensed architect. And after 3 years, if you have enough experience, you're now eligible to sit for the exam, the architectural licensing exam. It is well, now it's on computer and you can take it by segment, but when I took it, it was 4 days long. It cost you $1,000 to take the test. If you got any section wrong, you failed and you got to start all over again next year because they only did it once a year. So you have to pass that to be a licensed architect. So then you have a license and you can practice architecture on your own, either underneath somebody else or completely on your own. That's when I went this way instead of that way. As soon as I got that piece of paper, then I was off and running. And then every state you have to have a license in if you're going to practice. So if I want to go build a building in New Mexico, I've got to go to New Mexico and ask them to accept my credentials to get a license in New Mexico. So I'm currently licensed in 4 states today, Missouri, Kansas, Colorado, and South Carolina, of all places.
Do you have to retake that test in each state, or is it like a
The only-
national?
The only time you have to take any supplemental pieces are anything that's got a seismic zone or a seismic code. So Alaska and California are the 2 big ones. If I had to go there, I'd have to take another piece of the exam to do that. It's not hard, it's just math. Math isn't that hard. So that's to be on your own and to be a licensed architect, to sort of go your own way. 5 years at university, 3 years of work after university, then you can sit for your exam and be a licensed architect.
So for geology in general, it's pretty much a bachelor's degree as the minimum, and that depends on, I mean, that's regardless of whichever discipline geology you want to go into, or if you want to do like quite a few people into undergraduate with, you get your bachelor's and then you go work as an environmental staff member at, I don't know, like a refining plant or for a consulting company that does environmental and, like reclamation or in surveying work. You can work surveying work as well. Quite a few people tried to go into oil and gas, and I do know quite a few people did. I avoided it because it's extremely unpredictable, and as you saw during COVID, everything just shut down. I actually rode through the oil fields of Midland and Odessa, Texas during COVID, and it was like a ghost town. And usually it is extremely busy, and they're drilling there. I know several people got laid off, but unfortunately, yeah, they did. But you can get your degree and you can go straight into the career field you want to and get on-the-job training. If you want to pursue a higher education, you can go for graduate school, get your master's, or go to PhD, and then you can do postdoctoral work if you still want to continue it. And you can study things like I do. Higher degrees are usually like master's or PhD are usually required for more academic positions as well as more, how do I put it, like higher research positions. So what I do, you can have a bachelor's degree, and we actually, some of our interns are still in college, which that's also really cool. But I didn't have that opportunity either much. But usually it's a bachelor's degree is the bare minimum for what you do. And like I mentioned, depending on what job you go into, you can get on-the-job training, you can get there and start learning a lot more about geology. But you can also get that bachelor's and then maybe get a master's or something, and then also do like your own consulting work depending on what you focus in. Like geotechnical stuff or with seismic zones. You can go out and do survey for that with your own company. But yeah, mainly bachelor's degree is the minimum requirement.
Yeah, that's a good point about college internships. That's a big thing. So you can get internship doing any sort of kind of scientific studying, research while you're in college, and that stuff is really important because a lot of jobs are going to look for at least that college degree. And what's going to make you competitive is having those like internship opportunities and research opportunities. I've also noticed in my experience that having a master's degree really sets you apart for your pay scale and for your job, like what kind of cool job you can get. And just having some sort of formal research with an academic institution is really impressive for a lot of scientific firms, either privately or with the government.
Yeah, I didn't think about that just a second ago. What he mentioned with publications and also your higher research. A lot of, as far as accredited universities or just individuals who are really well known in their discipline, with them it's sort of your credentials lie more on how much work you've done as far as publication wise, and also so publications and also how do I put it, like conference presentations. Those tend to matter a lot towards your credibility as a scientist. And as far as a exam and a certification to be a geologist, there is state professional geology certification. So there's 2 exams. I've taken the first one and passed it, and that certification carries over throughout the whole U.S. So if you want to be certified in the state you're in, different states have different rules, and of course California has got to be difficult, and Texas also has to be difficult, I believe. But in general, you usually become what's called a geologist in training, and you work for 5 years under somebody who is a certified geologist, and then you can go and take the next test and get certified as a state professional geologist. But it's only in the state you're in. And Colorado doesn't really have that, but fortunately Colorado is basically like, if you work as a geologist, then you're considered a professional geologist. So, yay. I didn't have to do the hard work for that. It also costs a lot of money to take that test. So, yeah, I think it's like $250, $300 to take it. And it's a really hard test because it goes over everything in geology. So you gotta know everything from like calculating hydraulic water heads for a water well, determining where this bed is just based on basically using math is the easy way to put that. So you gotta know a little bit of everything to pass it.
I'd like to make just one more comment, if I could. We keep talking a lot about research. You guys especially are talking a lot about research. How many people have done a research paper? Okay, then you can probably put all of your hands down because you don't do research. You've done a literature review, and that's what you've done. Research is taking your own idea and exploring it. And that's completely different than what you've done in the past. You've done literature reviews, which means you've had a topic, you've gone to the library, and you've picked out books that talked about your topic, you've read those books, then you've sort of summarized them based on what you wanted to explore. And that's what you've done so far. That's just a fraction of what these guys are talking about. What these guys are talking about is having an original idea and a kernel of not only creativity but curiosity, and then exploring it to decide whether or not their idea was right or wrong. And both of those are right answers, by the way. And that's what increases the level of knowledge in the world. So what these guys are doing is increasing the level of knowledge in the world. So someday you're going to go do a literature review on paleontology, and you're going to find his paper in a book someplace with his name on it because he did original research. So if you think that you have ideas in your brain that you want to explore, you wonder what the answer might be, that's what these guys do for a living. That's what I have done in my career as well. But that's what research really means. It's being inquisitive, it's exploring it, and it's adding to the knowledge of the world. And that's a very important thing. That's what scientists do.
It is. Any other questions? Yeah.
How much growth potential do you have within your job, like promotions and stuff like that?
Good question.
So it kind of depends if you go and work for a private sector, a university, or the government, which each one of them have their own, not really requirements, but their own, how do I put it, like chain of command or tier of jobs. With government work, once you get into working in the government, which is my first foray into working for the government, you can start going up the ranks pretty easily depending on experience and work. With academia, it's a little bit more complicated. So if you work for a university as a professor or an adjunct or just somebody who's doing research, or like when I was in grad school, teaching assistant. That one is really experienced publication. There's also a lot of bureaucracy within the university system, and some of it is kind of depends on the university, but sometimes it's a little pedantic, I would say, honestly. Some of them kind of favor some, I don't know, some of them favor things that maybe shouldn't really matter, I guess is the way I can put it. But, what's that? Yeah, well, I've seen like before that they would take somebody who has more experience and publications in their field, and they're just in general a good research professor and staff member, but they didn't do enough of this activity this year, didn't get this much grant funding, so they won't move up the ladder as quickly as somebody else who did do all that, even though they didn't put in much work. I know it sounds like I'm trashing I'm not like saying that's all the time, but sometimes you have to put up with that, you do. With the private sector, it really depends on the company you're in and how many years you've been there, what other companies you've worked for, and it also depends on your job. In geology, like if you're an environmental consultant and you go work on ergon chemical manufacturing, and basically make sure they're not dumping a bunch of stuff into the water they shouldn't be, which sometimes happens. You go work for them, and then a few years later you go move to a different company. You might have a little bit more, you might get paid more at the other company because you have more experience, or you might start back where you started whenever you worked for the previous company, and then you have to work there for a little bit. It really just depends, to be honest. Does that answer your question? Cool.
Just to add to that, in environmental science, the upward mobility is pretty good. I think you can really work your way up the ranks if you're smart, if you're working hard, like if you have original research. I think the one thing is to remember with this kind of field research or field science specifically is that the higher you go up the ranks, the less you're going to be outside. And that's, for me, that's why I get paid $15 an hour, is because I like to stay low and go outside all the time. There's so much movement for me to go up in the ladder right now in my life, but I'm still a young man, I still got my legs, I still love being outside. I don't want to be on the computer all the time. I don't want to be dealing with phone calls all the time. When I'm ready to do that, when my knees are starting to ache, I can start to take on those tasks. My pay raise will go up. I'll be in the office more. And so there is plenty of opportunity to go up in environmental science research. It's just, what do you want to do for your task? How do you want to set up your life?
My mobility belongs to me. I'm my own boss. I can do whatever I want. But I can tell you that what I've learned so far is that as you continue to do your job, you learn really cool things you didn't know your job did, and that changes your direction. So.
Any other questions? Yes.
How many clients do you take home, like, per week?
Per week? I wish it was per week. It depends on the size of the project. For example, I probably have 8 projects on my desk right now. So between my employee and myself, we're working on 8 different things. They're in different stages. Some are in construction, some are still in design, some are being documented with drafting. Some are in their infancies, where I'm just holding meetings and talking about big ideas. So the way architecture works is it starts with just an idea and it goes all the way through to construction. And depending on its size, it takes a short time or a very long time. So it really varies. It would probably be more fair to tell you that in a typical year, in a typical 12-month time span, not taking into account construction time, I can probably get done 15 to 20 medium-sized projects in a year. That doesn't really tell you much, but that's the honest answer.
Any other questions? No. What personality traits are required for your job?
Well, again, for me, you got to be a good communicator. You got to not be able to. You got to be okay sitting where I'm sitting right now, and not being nervous about it, talking to anybody about anything at any time, knowing when you don't have the answer, when you say, you know what, I'll get back to you. And then just constantly exploring, just absolutely constantly exploring what you're doing and what the world is doing around you, and being curious about it, and continuing to pursue it. I think curiosity probably is the biggest thing.
Yeah, definitely curiosity.
Yeah, that's what keeps you motivated. Keeps you working.
Curiosity is a good one, because I know a lot of scientists who are not really that friendly, not really that talkative, and they're great. They do great work. They're great scientists. But yeah, being a hard worker and being curious and being passionate, I think are three things that would get you far in like environmental science field for sure.
I don't know, because I've been to several geology conferences, and they're honestly pretty fun. Because geologists, like, you go to a conference and people are there with like dusty shoes, like, and it's like a professional conference, dusty work boots, because we're always out doing that stuff, and we're all kind of outdoorsy people, I suppose would be a good way to put it. And then what you were saying about communicating, yeah, communication is extremely important in pretty much most fields, really. It really is very important how to communicate and talk to people. And there's something else you said, no, I've already forgotten, so.
What advice would you have for our students today?
You know, for me, it's don't worry. It's all going to happen. Like I said, I'm as old as your parents, and I'm still exploring what I do every day. And things are brand new for me every day, and I enjoy it every day. And I didn't know what I was going to do, and there are whole years I go where I don't know what's going to come hit my desk next, but it's always going to be an exploration. It's always going to be fun. It's always going to be something for me to put my brain into. I used to have this idea when I was in high school that if I wasn't 18 and I didn't go right into college, and I didn't go right out and get a wife and a house and a mortgage and a car, and if I didn't keep up with all of my peers, and if somebody went to graduate school and I didn't go to graduate school, I had all this internal pressure in my own head. And what I found out that doesn't matter. You're on your own path. You just do what you're going to do, and it'll all come for you. I mean, you're going to be okay. It just, get out of bed and go to school, and get out of bed and go to work, and get out of bed and be creative, and get out of bed and be curious, and just do it. Because it's not hard. Some pieces of it might be hard, but the rest of it's worth it. So just pursue it.
I would say that if I could go back in time and tell myself in high school something, it'd be one, invest in Bitcoin, and two, don't take that one job. But my advice for y'all would, that's how old I am. I remember Bitcoin came out. That's crazy. But which wasn't that long ago. But anyways, what I would tell you guys is, yeah, to definitely stay curious about things and definitely keep options open. But also, I would say, just explore your options pretty much. I wish I had explored more things back then, as far as options for careers, but also just interests in general. And thankfully, I ended up in a career that I definitely enjoy. Yeah, pretty much the same thing he said. Just keep.
And the point you made earlier too about internships is incredible.
Oh yeah, extremely good opportunity. Like I said, I wish that I had that when I was in high school. It would have been very nice. So, and instead I worked on boats after high school. So.
Yeah, the same thing. Like when those opportunities come across your desk or your life, take those opportunities. Don't worry about what you're going to be doing for your job 10 years from now. Drink water, wear sunscreen. That's it.
That's another thing I'll reiterate is you also learn you don't know anything, and don't worry about that, because I'm still learning every single day, and I'll do that for the rest of my life. And it's just good to learn new things, I guess, try new things, and yeah.
All right. Any last question? All right. I think we just have a couple minutes before the bell rings. If you want to start getting everything together and get your papers turned in.